Now, you didn't bring a book. Treasure trove
No,
only.
sorry, MOB. Sorry.
Oh, jump out of the window. Middle of the road. Jump out of the window. Okay. All right. Who hasn't done the book yet? No, it's language. No problem. Why the back? You didn't bring the book.
Yes, I have.
What question you are asking? What question you are asking?
If you ask question, like a notebook.
When I'm busy in the classroom, you're calling me up.
I didn't know you were in the classroom.
Okay, I'm sitting at home. What?
I don't know.
What's mushroom and do? Okay, an angel in disguise. Now, have you got a pencil with you? And then after that, now pencil. Okay, now what is this angel in disguise? Who is this angel? What is it? Do you all know the answer to this question? Do you all know this lesson? You all have done this lesson?
Yes, I have done.
You have not done. You have done. You've done. I don't know. You don't.
Just one paragraph it is.
One paragraph. You are doing one paragraph in school. Okay, fine. Which school you go to? Okay. Now, what is this about? It's a story about a family, a very poor family. The mother was actually a single mother and she had 3 children. But unfortunately, maybe she felt bringing up those children alone was very difficult for her. And she was not a very responsible mother. She was drinking, she was gambling, and she did not know when to stop. It was a habit with her. Just drinking and gambling, and with the result, she was also neglected health-wise. So was her children. The children were totally neglected. All right. Naturally, that is going to be the outcome of drunkenness and neglect. And one fine day, when she was extremely drunk, she fell down and she hit her head on the threshold. Threshold is, between your house and the outside portion. There's always a patti. That's called the threshold. Okay, so she hit her head on the threshold and she died. So usually, what happens is it was a village, and because of her bad behavior, because of the way she brought up her children, because of the way she was conducting herself in society, the villagers kept her apart. They were not messing around with her. They just did not want to have anything to do with her. But in times like these, when there's a death, everybody will come together. We forget our differences. We forget whatever there is between the dead person and the living. But they all came together. And the first thing is they took the body, they washed it, they cleaned it, and put some nice, clean clothes on that body. Great clothes. What do you mean, great clothes? Clothes.
Before putting the dead body inside the coffin, they actually put some kind of clothes.
No, not special, but it's clean clothes. But that is the final journey that the person is going to make. And it is our responsibility to see that the person is dressed up decently, respectably to go to their heavenly abode. So somehow they gathered, borrowed some clothes, put on that body, and they took that body, kept that body on a cart. One of the villagers, these were farmers, they had carts with them, put that body on the cart, took the body away from the house. So as long as the body was in the house, people were around. Once the body, big sign. Once the body, my class starts at 6:30.
Yeah, the auto.
The auto will not come, the aeroplane will not come, something will happen, this will happen, only to you. And so, what happened was, as long as the body was in the house, they were all there. Once the body left the house, they all went away to their own home. Nobody accompanied that body because it was a disrespected body, a poor body, pauper. So why bother? And they allowed that body to go. The body was just dropped into the grave, and the man who loaned his cart took one of the children, put him on the cart, and took him home. He said, "I'll take this boy." Eldest boy, he was about 12 years old. He was nice and strong. So the villagers said, "What are we doing now? How will we leave those three children alone?" "We'll take one child." Fellow man said, "He'll be of good use to me. Take him to my house. Let him be a farm hand." The second was a daughter. She was a little older than 12, or maybe she must have been 11 and 12 years old. But she was a girl who was not brought up in the ways of a home. She was a riffraff girl, always not having any discipline. She was not taught manners. She was not taught home ways. So one lady said, "I will take her home. She won't get any use to me right now, but gradually I will educate her, I will teach her, I will culture her, and I will bring her up." Though it's going to be very difficult for me because that girl does not know any discipline and she's always had a way of her own. The third child was between 8 and 10. Her name was Maggie. This third child was bedridden. She had fallen from the window and she had injured her spine and she was not able to get up from that bed. The only time when she got up from the bed was when she was carried by her mother. Otherwise, she never left that bed. And she was sitting down there and she found the people all going away, taking the children. Her elder sister went away, her elder brother went away. He just said a hurried bye-bye. And the villagers said, "Come on, no need of crying and all that, no saying, wasting time saying bye, let's go." And they took all of them. And this girl was left all alone. And she was frightened because she can't get up. Mother is gone. Everybody in the village is gone. And she was left all alone. There was only one man by the name of John Wheelwright. He was John Wheelwright. And he was there lingering around because he felt sorry for this girl. Now, he had a very hard exterior because he was a worker. Internally, he had a heart of coal. So he looked at the girl and she said, "Please, Mr. John, don't leave me all alone here. The sun is going to set and I'm all alone. There's nobody around here. What will I do?" So John also did not know what to do. How can he take this child with him? His wife will kill him for bringing an extra mouth to feed. Then he looked around and he asked some of the people who were going home, "Wait, see, this girl is left all alone. Doesn't matter, take her to the poorhouse. Take her here, take her there, but Diana will take her home. Do what you want to do with her." And she was scared, that little girl. So then John said, "Don't worry, I'll take you home." And he wrapped her up in clean clothes, which the villagers only had brought, and took her home. But he was dreading going home. He was dreading because his wife was going to, as it is, she was a terrible person. For 10 years, they were married, they didn't have any child. She was a very cranky person, all the time, creating trouble with him, nagging at him, put all the lights of the house were off. There was no happiness, no warmth in that house. But they were living. And then he said, as soon as she sees this body, she's going to create trouble. He did not say this. He came, and at the door, he said, "What the hell have you got in your hand there?" So he said, "Keep quiet, because she can hear, the girl can hear." She looked at him straight away. And usually, that man, whenever he had a fight with his wife, this man would not open his mouth. He would just turn away and go away. Let him keep on shouting, let him do what she wanted to do. He couldn't be bothered. He didn't open his mouth. He didn't confront his wife. He just walked away. That day, he stood straight and he looked at her and he said, "This girl can hear." For the first time in her life, that woman kept her, Jane, she kept her mouth shut. Seeing the strong look in the eyes of her husband, she just kept quiet. And he passed her and he went up to the first floor and kept that baby on that bed. And he walked away and went straight to his workshop, which was about a few feet away from his house. So he went there and he was working there and all that. And he was all the time looking at the house. And at night, or when the sun set, and he had to come home, For the first time in his life, he saw the lights of the house on, especially that light in that room where the little girl was kept. And he came quietly in the room, in the house, and he climbed up the steps without making any sound. And from the window, he could see what was happening inside. They couldn't see from out. They couldn't see him from out. The girls was facing him, but his wife's back was facing him. And he could see that there was some conversation going on, and the face of the girl was nice and pleasant. Okay, there was no anger, there was no fright on the face of the girl. So he said, "Okay, something is happening," and he just walked away. And then what happened was, before that, the earlier in the evening, his wife said, "Why have you brought her home? Put her in the poorhouse." So he said, "To take her to the poorhouse, I just can't go and keep her there. I'm going to make an appointment. They will let me know whether there's a bed available. They will let me know whether there's food available. Then only I can take her. I can't go on a foolish trip and then come back, okay, with the same bundle in my hand." "Okay, so she's going to stay here for the night?" "Yes." "Why don't you make a phone call just now itself and find out whether the bed is available and whether they've got food for this girl?" He didn't bother. He took the girl and he kept her out. In the evening when he came, he found that his wife was sitting down and having a nice little doll carol with the girl. He didn't interfere. He kept his mouth shut and he quietly came down. And when he was coming down, he made a big noise with his feet to give an indication to his wife that he's come home. So she said for the first time, "Okay, don't worry, dinner is ready." For the first time in her life, she spoke to him politely and she said, "Dinner is ready. Okay, I'll be there out in a few minutes." So he realized some change has taken place. This is where the miracle is taking place, and that little girl is now influencing the family, and the family now, she's now becoming an angel in disguise in this house. She was nothing else but a paralyzed child. But the changes that she brought about from the way the wife spoke. Initially, she wanted to kill him for having brought the bundle. Now she says, "Wait, there's food available. I'm coming." Okay? She spoke to him for the first time in the last 10 years. So the miracle is taking place. And then he was very surprised. So he went and sat down. He washed himself, his hands. He sat on the table. And then she brought food on the table. And he is looking at the food and looking at in that direction where that girl was. So he said, "Don't worry about her. Food is there. Let us eat our food first, and then I will take food for her." Who said it? Jane said. So he was quite happy that she has got some food for that girl. After the food was over, she soaked a lot of bread and a cup of milk, and she took it up, and the girl was eating, and she was enjoying herself, and he was watching. Whole evening, no talk about that girl and the poorhouse. It went on as usual. They went to sleep. Early the next morning, there was breakfast. She prepared breakfast for her also, and they were okay. And just before that, he said, "I think we better take her to the poorhouse." So the mother said, "Why take her to the poorhouse? She's so very, very weak. Let her remain here for 1 or 2 days." So he said, "Okay, but she'll come in your way, no? Because you are so busy, and then you have to look after her, and she's a paralyzed child." So he said, No, let her be. And when she gets okay, then you can take her to the poorhouse." After that, not a word about the poorhouse was spoken about. He never went to the poorhouse with in accordance with this girl. For this girl, she went to the poorhouse before, maybe to give a donation, but never to take this girl. This girl remained in that house, not for that day, not for that week, not for that month, but she remained there forever. And what happened is, gradually, little by little, there was a change in Mrs. Jane's personality. She became kinder. She began to laugh. She began to sing. There was a lot of light in their house. There was a lot of light in their lives. For the first time, Mr. John Cartwright was happy. They really lived a good married life. Because this little girl, who was a cripple, was nothing else but an angel in disguise in the lives of these two people. That is a story. Okay? So he struck her. An angel in disguise. Idleness, vice, and intemperance. Intemperance means lack of control. She was so idle, she was so vicious, she was so drunk, and all these vices that she had, they were out of control. She could not control them. Intemperance means without any control. Intemperance means without any control. Had done that miserable work means had brought misery in the lives of the mother and the three children. And the dead mother lay cold and still. Still means absolutely straight. Amid her wretched children, between her wretched children. She had fallen upon the threshold of her own door in a drunken fit and died in the presence of her frightened little ones. She died. Have you understood so far, all of you? Death touches the spring of our common humanity. It means that somebody dies, all of us, our human side comes out. Okay? No matter how bad that person is who died, no matter he was our biggest enemy, if he is dead, we automatically will go for to bridge the differences. Okay? So he's here. This woman had been despised means hated, scoffed at, laughed at, and angrily denounced. Angrily denounced means rejected, angrily rejected by nearly every man, every woman, and child in the village. But now, as a fact of her death was passed from lip to lip, means what? The fact of her death, yeah, by word of mouth. She died, she died, she died. From by word of mouth, people started spreading the news from lip to lip. In subdued tones, very quiet, she died, she died, she died. Because nobody wanted to talk to her about that person. She was such a wretched person, nobody wanted to talk about her openly. Pity took the place of anger and sorrow of denunciation, meaning all those people who were angry with her now felt sorry for her, for the three children. And
What
sorrow.
is denunciation?
Huh?
Denunciation is death.
No, denunciation means rejected. They reduced it. They had rejected her. So, in place of rejection, now sorrow overcome everybody. Neighbors went hastily to the old tumble-down hut, to her house, in which she had secured little more than a place of shelter from summer heats and winter cold. She had taken small little pitch and grabbed so much of land and she had covered it up with little bamboos and little straw. That's how she kept the children away from the winter and away from the sun. And with some great clothes, some clean clothes that you put on a dead body for a decent interment. Interment means funeral. Interment means funeral of the body, and some with food for the half-starving children. 3 in number. One of these, John, the oldest, a boy of 12, or a stout lad, able to earn his living with any farmer.
Interment means body.
Interment means funeral, burial. Interment means burial. What happened?
But it didn't mean some clothes for some decent clothes for the children or for the.
You know, I don't understand. What you're talking about? What is this? Decent interment of the body.
Before putting the body inside the coffin, they put the clothes on the
Clean clothes on the body.
on the body. So that
No, what is your difficulty? What is it?
I feel like the line means that those he had some.
I didn't tell you what you said.
I feel like the line means that those clothes are for the children and some and the.
No. With great clothes for a decent interment of the body. Of the body. Which body? Interment means burial. Which body is going to be buried? The mother's body. So they brought clean clothes for the mother. Children, of course, also. But for the particular mother, they brought good, great clothes. Who's going to be put into the grave? The mother. Now, yes or no? Correct? Okay. Of these, John, the oldest, a boy of 12, was a stout lad able to earn his living with any farmer. Kate, between 10 and 11, was a bright, active girl, out of whom something clever might be made if in good hands. If in good hands means if someone good would be able to look after her and teach her good ways. But poor little Maggie, the youngest, was hopelessly diseased. 2 years before, a fall from a window had injured her spine, and she had not been able to leave her bed since, except when lifted in the arms of her mother. So she was crippled. What is to be done with the children? That was the chief question now. Chief question means the main question. Main question now. The dead mother would go underground. She would be buried and be forever beyond all care or concern of the villagers. Nobody would care for her. Nobody would be concerned about her because she's dead and she's buried. But the children must not be left to starve. After considering the matter and talking it over with his wife, Farmer Jones said that he would take John and do well by him. And do well by him means teach him the trade and let him be able to live for himself and do something for his life. And do well by him. Now that his mother was out of the way, perhaps his mother was not sending him to work. She also was drinking, maybe she was giving the children also to drink. Now the mother was away. So now the villagers said, we will take care of the boy. And Mrs. Ellis, who had been looking out for a bound girl means servant girl, concluded that it would be charitable in her to make choice of Katie, even though she was too young to be of much use for several years. She said Katie is very, very young. She's only 11 years old, too young to make her do any work. But I will educate her, I will train her, so that later on she will be of some use to anybody. She could work as a housemaid in anybody's house, but she has to be trained. I could do much better, I know, said Mrs. Ellis, but as no one seemed inclined to take her, I must act from a sense of duty, expect to have trouble with the child, for she is an indisciplined thing, used to having her own way. She was never a girl of the house, always roaming around, loafing around, maybe stealing, maybe cheating, and not doing whatever she felt like doing. But no one said, I'll take Maggie. Pitying glances were cast on her vain and wasted form. Vain and wasted form is thin form. It was very thin, it was almost wasted. And she was sitting on the bed, so her muscles were not even exercised. So she was extremely weak. Nobody bothered to look at her. And thoughts were troubled on her account. Everybody was troubled about her, but nobody wanted to help her out. Mothers brought cast-off garments and removing her soiled and ragged clothes, soiled means dirty clothes. Mothers took off her dirty clothes, dressed her in a clean attire, dressed her in a clean dress. The sad eyes and patient face of the little one touched many hearts and even knocked at them for entrance. Means her face knocked at the hearts of people. Please take me in your heart. But nobody was prepared to take that responsibility. But none opened it to take her in. Who wanted a bedridden child? Take her to the poorhouse, said a rough man, of whom the question was asked. What's to be done with Maggie? Was asked. Nobody is going to be bothered with her. The poorhouse is a sad place for a sick and helpless child, answered one. For your child or mine, that poorhouse is a bad house. For your child or my child, they're arguing. Is it a poor house for your child or mine? Not for your child because your child has got a home. Not for my child because my child has got a home. It is for this girl. This girl has got nobody. Her mother is dead. It is the best place for her. So you can't call that house a poor house for her because for her, that house is going to be heaven. Somebody will be looking after her. Okay? For my child, it will be a poor house. For your child, it will be a poor house, but not for Maggie. Somebody will be looking after her in that poor house. For your child or mine, said the other, lightly speaking. But for this brat, it will prove a blessed change. She will be kept clean. She will have healthy food and she will be doctored, which is more than can be said of her past condition. Doctored means she will be monitored. Her health will be monitored. Maybe by a doctor, maybe by a nurse. Somebody will look after her much better than what she was looked after by her own mother. There was reason in that, There was sense in that. Reason means sense in that. But still it didn't satisfy. It was not a satisfactory decision to make. The day following the day of death was made the day of the burial. Meaning what? The day following the day of death was made the day of the funeral.
2 days after.
One day after the mother died, that day was the funeral when she was going to be buried. A few neighbors were at the miserable hovel. Hovel means house, home, hut. But none followed dead cart as it bore the unhonored remains to its pauper grave. Nobody went to accompany the dead body to the graveside. We always go no, to the grave to bury the person or to bury the person, but here nobody bothered. Let it go.
What is a pauper grave?
Pauper means poor grave. Pauper is a poor man. Pauper grave.
Pauper means a poor man.
Poor man, yeah. See, what happens is, it is among us Catholics or Christians, we buy our own grave. We got the money, so we buy that land and we say only our people will be buried in that land. Okay? But if you don't have the money, then you're just thrown into a common grave. Everybody is using that grave. This grave, nobody will use because it belongs to the family. Okay? But other people who can't afford to buy the grave, anybody, it's a common grave, anybody can be buried there. That's called a pauper grave. Okay? Alright. Farmer Jones, after the coffin was taken out, placed John in his wagon and drove away. So he used his wagon to carry the coffin. Once the coffin was thrown into the ground, he put the son on that wagon and he took him home and drove away. Satisfied that he had done his duty, Mrs. Ellis spoke to Kate in a hurried air. Bid means say bye-bye to your sister and drew the tearful children apart ere scarcely their lips had touched in a sobbing farewell. So hardly the children said bye-bye to each other and kissed each other, they were pulled apart. Farmer Jones took John and Mrs. Ellis took Kate. Maggie was left alone in the house.
And so these children had a good bonding with each.
The children had a good bonding between them. Also, it appeared. Okay? Now, hastily others went out, some glancing at Maggie and some resolutely refraining from a look until all had done. Resolute means making a great effort. All of them wanted to turn around and look at Maggie, but they made a conscious effort not to turn around because if they turned around, they felt that their heart would melt and they would go and pick up the child. So resolutely means they made a strong resolution not to turn around and look at Maggie. They just wanted to go ahead and go home. Okay, that's called resolutely. Resolution means strong reserve, strong resolution not to turn around. Refraining means preventing a look until all had gone. She was alone. Just beyond the threshold, Joe Thompson, the wheelwright. Who's a wheelwright? Wheelwright means the one who makes the wheels right. Meaning those people had carts, they had hard garis, those, and they had cycles. All those wheels had to be repaired. So they were being repaired by Joe Thompson. Joe Thompson was a wheelwright. He was repairing wheels. Paused and said to the blacksmith's wife, who was hastening off with the rest. He's talking to the blacksmith's wife. She was also running away with the others. It's a cruel thing to leave her so. Then take her to the poorhouse. She'll have to go there, answered the blacksmith's wife, springing away and leaving Joe behind. For a little while, the man stood with a puzzled air. Then he turned back and went into the hovel again. Why was he puzzled? Why was Joe Thompson puzzled?
He was deciding whether or not to take.
Whether to take her or not. Should I take her or should I not take her? And then he turned back and went into the hovel again. What is the hovel, that girl? What's the hovel? Don't answer out of 10. Yes, it's girl. What's the hovel? A hut, a poorhouse. Maggie, with a painful effort, had raised herself to an upright position and was sitting on the bed, straining her eyes upon the door, out of which all had disappeared. Why was she straining her eyes?
So that to see that if somebody is coming.
Yeah, because she, after most of the time she was on the bed and her eyes were closed and she was sleeping. Suddenly she had to go and look at the bright light, and that was hurting her eyes. So it was straining. This was straining. Her eyes upon the door, out of which all had disappeared. A vague terror, very strange terror, vague means strange terror, had come into her thin white face. Oh, Mr. Thompson, she cried out, catching her suspended breath. Don't leave me here all alone. Though rough in exterior, exterior means outside he looked to be very, very rough. Joe Thompson, the wheelwright, had a heart and it was very tender in some places. He liked the children and was pleased to have them come to his shop where sleds. Sled means what? The small little, wooden pieces with small little wheels meant for your personal use. Okay, sleds and wagons were made or mended for the village lads without a draft on their hoarded sixpences. Hoarded sixpences mean they had pocket money. Okay, so they were hoarding it. So when they came to get their things,
But
their
isn't he a
wheels,
wheelwright?
Huh?
Isn't he a wheelwright?
he's a wheelwright. Yeah.
So why is he making sleds and vans?
Why
Not
not?
making, he's wearing the grease of those.
He's a
This is made and
He made a mended for the village. Yeah, he made, what is that supposed?
you don't have wheels on sleds.
He doesn't have wheels on
Sleds.
sleds. See, if you're talking about snow, this is not snow here. So you have sleds, you know. And it's not it's not SLEDG. It is SLEDS. See the spelling? Foolish fool. Sleds, not sledges. Sledges are snow. Sleds and wagons were made or mended for the village lad without a draft on their hoarded sixpences. Hoarded sixpences will be their pocket money. They were hoarding their pocket money. And when they went to Joe Thompson, he would do it free, without a draft means free of cost, without charging them or taking down any money from their hoarded sixpences. He never charged them any money, free of cost. No, dear, he answered. No, dear, he answered to whom? To what reason? Why?
And she asked him to not leave her.
Not to leave me alone, not to leave me alone. No, dear, he answered in a kind voice, going to the bed and stooping down over the child, bending down over the child. You shan't be left here alone. Then he wrapped her with the gentleness almost of a woman in the green bedclothes which some neighbor had brought, and lifting her in his strong arms, bore her out into the air across the field that lay between the hovel and his home. He took her out of the house, out of her house towards his house. Now, Joe Thompson's wife, who happened to be childless, was not a woman of saintly temper. She wasn't the same. Nor much given to self-denial for others' goods. Not given to self-denial of others' goods means what, Andrew? Not much given to self-denial for others' goods means what?
She did not deny whenever someone asked.
She did not refuse her bonds. She did not refuse her bonds even if it would benefit others.
She did not care about what the others are going through.
Self-denial, yes, she was selfish. She did not. Self-denial means she was not prepared to deny herself for somebody else's good. If she had a bottle of water and he was very thirsty, she would not deny herself the water. He is thirsty, go ahead with him. I will not deny myself my glass of water. She would not deny herself for other people's goods. So she was not for the good of other people. So she's not going to sacrifice her happiness to look after that girl or to look after anybody or to be charitable towards anybody. She was not a charitable person. She would not do it at the cost of her happiness. Okay? Now, and Joe had well-grounded doubts touching the manner of greeting she should receive on his arrival. Well-grounded doubts mean he had a lot of doubts as to how he will be received when he goes home. He knew fully well that she would really let him have it when she saw that bundle in his hands. He knew exactly what she would have said. Mrs. Thompson saw him approaching from the window and with ruffling feathers. Ruffling feathers means what? Now, a fowl. If it is calm and quiet, the feathers are very calm and very neat. But if it wants to have a fight, it will ruffle the feathers and then attack you. So she did that. She just ruffled herself, picked a collar anger, and came running down the steps to attack him. Like a fowl ruffling her feathers to attack the opponent. Ruffling her feathers met him a few paces from the door as he opened the garden gate and came in. He bore a precious burden and he felt it to be so. As his arms held the sick child to his breast, a sphere of tenderness went out from her and penetrated his feelings. As he held her tight, the love that the little girl was coming out and extending to me, a bond of love was being established between both of them. A bond had already corded itself round them both. Love was springing into life. This is the beginning of the angel in disguise. How is she becoming an angel in disguise in that home? This is the first thing. What is the matter there? Why are you laughing, all of you? Ah, devils! Who's calling you? I confiscate that phone. And nobody is going to call me up and ask for that phone back again. We'll throw it in the middle of the road and let every car pass over it. Have you understood? God, what have you got there? Sharply questioned Mrs. Thompson. Joe felt the child start. When she shouted, the little child was startled and shrank against him. He did not reply, except by a look that was pleading and cautionary. He looked at her, his wife, very pleadingly and cautioned me, keep quiet, that girl can listen to what you're saying. He that said, wait a moment for explanation and be gentle. That was the look he gave his wife. And passing in, carried Maggie to the small chamber on the first floor and laid her on the bed. Then stepping back, he shut the door and stood face to face with his vinegar-tempered wife in the passageway outside. Why did he shut the door?
So that the girl couldn't
So
hear.
that the child would not hear the fights that would take place. You haven't brought home that sick brat. Anger and astonishment were in the tones of Mrs. Joe Thompson. Her face was in a flame. I think women's hearts are sometimes very hard, said Joe. Usually Joe Thompson got out of his wife's way or kept rigidly silent and non-combatant means does not want to fight. He never fought with his wife. He just ran away from the scene. When she fired up on any subject, it was with some surprise, therefore, that she now encountered a firmly set countenance with a resolute pair of eyes. So usually she used to find her husband run away. But this time, for the first time, she happened to encounter me with some surprise. She met a firmly set countenance. She met the strong countenance of her husband eye to eye. For the first time, that man looked straight at his wife and did not run away. And she was scared. Resolute pair of eyes means very, very determined pair of eyes. I am not going to leave. You're not going to have your way this time. I will have my way. This was John's message with the help of his eyes to his wife. Women's hearts are not half so hard as men's. Joe saw by a quick intuition that his
What does this mean?
women's hearts are not half so hard as men's. Men's hearts are said to be very, very hard. Women's hearts are not as hard. They're soft. So he's telling his wife, you should have a soft heart. So I'm having a soft heart and I brought this girl home, and you have a hard heart and I'm telling you to take the child away from here. He's just telling her, your heart is contrary to the statement. Women's hearts are softer than men's. Okay, that was it. Joe saw by a quick intuition that his resolute bearing had impressed his wife, and he answered quickly. So immediately Joe saw that his determination, looking at his wife, had some effect. His wife kept her mouth shut. She knew that her husband was wanting his decision to be respected this time. And he answered quickly and with a real indignation, boldness. Be that as it may, every woman at the funeral turned her eyes steadily from the sick child's face, and when the cart went off with her dead mother, hurried away and left her alone in that old hut with the sun not an hour in the day. In the skies, it can be believed, women's hearts were supposed to be softer than men. All of them waited till the mother's body was taken away and then turned their backs and went straight home, after knowing that there's only 1 hour left for the sun to set. 1 hour more for the entire place to be dark. Yet they all left her all alone and went away. Women whose hearts are supposed to be soft. Where were John and Kate? Asked Mrs. Thompson. Farmer John tossed John into his wagon and drove off. Katie went home with Mrs. Ellis, but nobody wanted the poor sick woman. Send her to the poorhouse was the cry. Okay? Why didn't you let her go then? What did you bring her here for? She can't walk to the poorhouse, said Joe. Somebody's arms must carry her, and mine are strong enough for that task. Then why didn't you keep on going? Why did you stop here? Demanded his wife. Why did you not keep on going to the poorhouse? Why did you stop here? Because I'm not apt to go on fool's errands. Means what? I'm not apt to go on fool's errands. Means what?
I think he's trying to convey that he won't do an errand which might not result in like achieving anything.
Yeah. In other words, yeah.
Means that he would not go like if he go there and there was no like that. He had to take the girl away.
Yeah, it would be a foolish errand for him to go with the parcel with this girl. He has to follow a protocol. He's supposed to make a phone call, then talk to the head of that poorhouse, request them, maybe take some money also. Correct? That he had to follow. Without doing all this, going there would be a fool's errand. They say, I'm not used to going on fool's errands. The guardians must be first seen and permit obtained. There was no gainsaying this. Gainsaying means there was no way of denying this. Gainsaying means you can't deny this is the truth. You have to make arrangement before you go there. When will you see the guardians? Was asked with irrepressible impatience. She couldn't control her patience. Irrepressible means could not control. Tomorrow. Why would I want it tomorrow? Go at once for the permit and get the whole thing off your hands tonight. Jane said the wheelwright with an impressiveness of tone that greatly subdued his wife. Meaning with a type of impression, with such an impression that controlled his wife. Loudly he spoke to his wife, made an impression and controlled his wife. Subdued means controlled. It is read in the Bible sometimes and find much said about little children. How the Savior rebuked his disciples. Rebuke means scolded his disciples who would not receive them. How he took them in his arms and blessed them, and how he said that whosoever gave them even a cup of cold water should not go unrewarded. And this is a quotation from the Bible. What happened is Jesus was roaming from one place to another. He was spreading Christianity. Jesus was a Jew, but he was establishing Christianity. And he was going from place to place, from village to village, to spread Christianity. And there was one time when he was so tired and he sat down there to take a little rest. At that time, mothers brought their little children to him to be blessed. And the disciples or those friends close to Jesus, they said, take your children away from here, please take them away. Because he's tired. He's just sitting there resting, please take them away. And Jesus said, do not take children away from me. Whoever looks after them and whoever is kind to them and even gives them a cup of water will be very well rewarded in heaven. Don't take away the children. Now, the small thing for us to keep this poor motherless little one for a single night. So he's telling his wife, don't you think it's a small thing for us to keep this girl with us for one night? She's the motherless child, just lost her mother. Few hours ago, her mother is dead. It's a big thing for you to keep her with us for one night. To be kind to her for a single night, to make her life comfortable for a single night. The voice of the strong, rough man shook and he turned his head away. Why did he turn his head away? Because his voice was quivering and because he was in tears. He felt sorry for that girl. So that the moisture in his eyes, the tears in his eyes, might not be seen. Mrs. Thompson did not answer, but a soft feeling cut into her heart. Now her heart is melting. Now again, the angel is taking, is working miracles. Okay. Now, look at her kindly, Jane. Speak to her kindly, said Joe. Think of her dead mother and the loneliness, the pain, the sorrow that must be on her coming life. The softness of his heart gave unwanted eloquence to his lips. The softness of his heart gave unwanted, means unusual. Eloquence means he could speak freely. Joe Thompson was not a person who could speak freely, fluently. But because of this situation, the softness of his heart made him speak very fluently and he was able to convince his wife. Unwanted means unusual. Unwanted means unusual. Unusual. Now, Mrs. Thompson did not reply, but presently turned towards the little chamber where her husband had deposited Maggie. And pushing open the door, she quietly went in. Joe did not follow. He saw that her state had changed. He saw that his wife's state had changed. So he did not go inside. He knew pretty well his wife won't do any damage to her. He would not throw her out or beat her. He knew his wife was calm, so he did not enter the room. Joe did not follow. He saw that her state had changed and felt that it would be best to leave her alone with the child. So he went to his shop, which stood near the house, and worked until dusky evening released him from labor. Means what? Dusky evening released him from labor means what?
Like after the sunset.
As soon as the sun set, just before the sun sets, he goes down.
Yeah, the labor was over. Means
Usually was
as soon as the sun sets, as soon as it became dusk, he had to close the shop. His work ends, no? So dusky labor released him from dusky evening, released him from labor. He came home. A light shining through the little chamber windows was the first object that attracted Joe's attention on turning towards the house. The first thing he saw was the lights. That means he was happy, something is happening. She didn't put the light up and keep Maggie in darkness. She would have very well done that. We grew to the girl and put the light off and kept her in darkness. No, but there was light there in the room. Means something was going on. He was kind to her. She was kind to her. A light shining through the little chamber windows was the first object that attracted Joe's attention on turning towards the house. It was a good omen, a good sign. The path led him by this window, and then opposite, he could not help pausing to look in. It was now dark enough outside to screen him from observation. They could not see him. Maggie lay a little raised on the pillow with a lamp shining full upon her face. Mrs. Thompson was sitting by her bed, talking to the child, but her back was towards the window, so that her countenance was not seen. Her back was towards the window, so he could see her back. He couldn't see her face. Whose face? His wife's face. From Maggie's face, so he could see only Maggie's face. From Maggie's face, therefore, Joe must read the character of the intercourse. He saw that her eyes were intently fixed upon his wife. That now and then a few words came, as if in answers from her lips. that her expression was sad and tender, but he saw nothing of bitterness or pain. A deep drawn breath was followed by one of relief as a weight lifted itself from his heart. When he saw his wife sitting and talking to Maggie, and Maggie answering his mother, his wife, he felt so light, a heavy burden was lifted up from his chest. Means he knew that his wife had, at least for today, accepted the child. So there was no need for him after the whole day to go back again to the poorhouse and make those arrangements. Basically, he had fallen in love with that little girl, okay? And he wanted to look after that little girl. On entering, Joe did not go immediately to the little chamber. His heavy tread upon the kitchen brought his wife somewhat hurriedly from the room where she had been with Maggie. Joe thought it best not to refer to the child, nor to manifest any concern in regard to her. Manifest means to show any regard to her. He did not want to talk about her at all because he was afraid his wife would say, take her. Okay? He did not want something's happening, that will remain. Let me not interfere. Let me not rock the boat. It is sailing smoothly. How soon will supper be ready? He asked. Right soon. For the first time, she is speaking to him politely. Right soon, answered Mrs. Thompson, beginning to bustle about. Bustle means arrange and get ready to get the food ready. There was no asperity in her voice. Asperity means anger. Usually she would say, what do you think? I'm free to hold a cook for you. She would answer badly. Today, she said, just wait for some time. I'll get things ready. Again, a change in her attitude, in her behavior. Miracle is taking place. After washing from his hands and face the dust and soil of work, Joe left the kitchen and went to the little bedroom. A pair of large, bright eyes looked up at him from the snowy bed. Snowy bed, why snowy bed? It was white, because I had white bed sheet, not because it was cold. Snowy means white bed sheet, everything was white. And fluffy, very light, fluffy. Looked at him tenderly, gratefully, pleadingly. How his heart swelled in his bosom. With what a quicker motion came the heartbeats. Joe sat down and now for the first time, examining the thin frame carefully under the lamplight, saw that it was an attractive face and full of childish sweetness which suffering had not been able to obliterate. Obliterate means take away. So he saw the face was a beautiful face, a very angelic face, and all the suffering and all that beautiful face could not take away the suffering that was showing on her face. Her face was full of suffering, despite the fact that it was a young face and an angelic face. Your name is Maggie, he said, as he sat down and took her soft little hand in his. Yes, sir. Her voice struck a chord that quivered in a low strain of music. Very beautiful, soft voice she had. Have you been sick long? Yes, sir. What a sweet patience was in her tone. Has a doctor been to see you? He used to come, but not lately. No, sir. Have you any pain? Sometimes, but not now. And when had you pain? This morning. My side ached and my back hurt when you carried me. It hurts you to be lifted or moved about? Yes, sir. Your side doesn't ache now? No, sir. Does it ache a great deal? Yes, sir. But it hasn't ached any since I've been on this soft bed. The soft bed feels good. Oh, yes, sir. So good. What a satisfaction mingled with gratitude was in her voice. Supper is ready, said Mrs. Thompson, looking into the room a little while afterwards. Joe glanced from his wife's face to that of Maggie. She understood him and answered. Why did he look from his wife's face to Maggie's face, this girl? Why did he look from... Ma, I said this girl, since when are you a girl? Since when are you a girl? Ah?
He was trying to look at it as a customer, but is she prepared food for him?
Yeah, have you prepared food for her as well? Joe, yeah. She can wait little until we are done. then I will bring her something to eat. There was an effort at indifference on the part of Mrs. Thompson, meaning the Mrs. Thompson appeared to be indifferent. I mean, she can eat food after all. She appeared to be indifferent, but basically she was not indifferent. But the husband had seen her through the window and understood that the coldness was assumed. He had seen her through the window and he assumed that this so-called indifference was only a pretense. His wife was not pretending, she was genuinely interested in that girl. Joe waited after sitting down on the table for his wife to introduce the subject uppermost in both of their thoughts. What was the subject uppermost in both of them? Outside, this boy. What is the subject uppermost in their mouth? What was it? What about Maggie? To the poorhouse. To be taken to the poor. Which school have you come from? Not quite. You have done this essay? Not funny. Okay. It's the first not point child who comes here. Who's the other one?
She's for chemistry.
She's not for English, right?
No.
But she kept silent on that theme for many minutes. Introduce the subject at the most uppermost, then subject may take her to the poorhouse. That will be the uppermost subject. Subject uppermost in both of their thoughts. But she kept silent on that theme for many minutes, and he maintained like reserve. And he also kept quiet regarding that. He did not open his mouth. At last, she said abruptly, "What are you going to do with that child?" "I thought you understood me, that she was to go to the poorhouse," replied Joe, as if surprised at a question. Okay? He said, "I think you know that I'm going to take her to the poorhouse." Okay? We stop here now. We stop here now. I'll come back. What are you doing towards you? I think why can't I just always I'm finding a smirk on your face, Andrew? Why the smirk on your face? Huh? You want me to rub it up? Read up to where I have explained to you, and if there's any word or anything you've not understood, immediately bracket it and ask me when I come back. Read from the beginning up to where I have stopped. I'm coming.
Can I buy this book?
No.
I
I made notes.